Hello and welcome back to the NFL Week 10 preview of the top matchups for running back and wide receiver. We are going to get into them on this show. It's going to be a quick hitter going over the top 5 of both spots. Now, I am your host, Tyler Weeman, at FlatTyler83 on Twitter and on your DFS sites. Now let's dig into the actual slate. But before we do, come join us at LineStar. $39.99 per month gets you access to all we do, all the props, all the DFS. You get it all for one low price. There also is a free 7-day trial if you want to go through the app stores and have never used us before. Download LineStar app through either iOS or Android, and you can get access to that if you've never tried us out. Now, let's get into the game. I feel like EA Sports right there. All right. Getting over to the team defense tool. That is how we break it down. What the team defense tool is it is similar to a DVOA. There is some slight differences, though, as we do have rolling averages that we go over with to make sure there hasn't been a system change, which we think is a little more accurate than the DVOA. So we can go through last 2 games, last 5, last 10, whatever we want. I like to stick with last 5 for this show. It did bring us some good ones of last week. We had Saquon Barkley on there. We had Cortland Sutton on there. We had Josh Jacobs, who did all right. And unfortunately, we also had guys like Chris Olave that got hurt very early in the game. All right, so let's dig into it. So, top running back matchup for Week 10, we got Bijan Robinson, Washington versus Pittsburgh. Now, good old B-Rob was out last week, so we need to watch what goes on this week if he is out again. There's also another kind of worrying data point for here. Is the Steelers have gotten beat through the air, not necessarily on the ground. They're only allowing 81.8 yards per game on the ground, but 42.5 through the air. And then if you take that to the last 4, it's 94.3 on the ground and 54 through the air with 0.8 touchdowns per game over that 4-week span. So in that situation, you know, you're looking at the Commanders who really use 2 running backs in Robinson and Eckler. You might want Eckler a little more than Robinson just because Eckler is much more explosive in that receiving game. Now, if Robinson is out and Eckler, you know, slides into that top spot, Eckler starts to look very, very interesting because you do have some upside from the ground game, but major upside in that receiving game. So absolutely interested in this spot, but we do need to wait until the end of the week to really, you know, assess the spot. But Bijan Robinson is on the top of our board. Next, we got Bijan Robinson versus the Saints. Saints have just got crushed on the ground. 127.3 yards per game over the last 4 with 1.8 touchdowns. 4 receptions for 27 added on there. And Bijan's been good. And finally, his touch numbers jumped up. He had 26 touches last week. That's the kind of numbers we want to see from a guy that's almost 9K. He gets that many touches in such a good spot, and he can absolutely have 2 touchdowns on top of all the yardage work. So definitely interested in some Bijan Robinson this week. Next, we got James Conner versus the Jets. You know, I don't love a matchup versus the Jets, but they've been giving up on the ground big time. James Conner, dual threat, can beat you on the ground, can beat you through the air. Very interested in this spot. Over the last 4, allowing 115 yards per game on the ground, adding in 1 touchdown per game, and then a little light on the receiving work. But hey, I don't mind going here, and I don't mind going to James Conner, who the workload is there consistently around or over 20 touches. and definitely has the upside to get in the end zone. We have seen him get to the high 20s before. He just hasn't done it this season, so a little worry there, but very interested. So the worry is the ceiling there for you to win a GPP? The floor or the median 100% is there in this matchup. We're just worried about his ceiling. Can he get there? I think there is a chance, but we'll see. James Conner also comes in a little under-owned, which is always kind of nice. Next, we got Alvin Kamara versus the Falcons. So this is a very interesting spot, especially because where the Falcons have given it up is through the air. Over the last 4 games, 7.3 receptions and 42 receiving yards to the running back. Now, it only goes with 0.3 touchdowns. So that's kind of the issue there is versus the Falcons, running backs haven't got into the end zone, but they've been able to rack up receptions, rack up some receiving yards, and sprinkle in decent rushing totals. Then you put in Alvin Kamara in the mix, who last week had 35 touches. 35. Just absolutely insane. The issue here is the Saints team is awful, and I don't know if they can actually stay in the game, especially with pretty much no wide receivers to speak of. So it's a pretty tough spot. The Falcons literally just need to stop Kamara. Can they do it? Maybe, but it is a good spot for Kamara. His workload is likely to be huge, and a big workload for an explosive back is generally a good thing. And if the Falcons, get ahead, it just means more throwing and more targets to Kamara in a good reception spot. And lastly, we got Christian McCaffrey. CMC is expected back. He is in a great spot, but we have to be concerned about workload. He has missed the entire season. He has tendinitis in both Achilles. So we really have no idea what this workload is going to be like. Make sure you pay attention to news throughout the week. I do expect him to be limited in some capacity. I do not expect him to come out with, 20, 25 touches like he was all last season. If he does, he's an absolute smash. I just don't think that is very likely, and I think they probably pick and choose his spots and be a little careful with him this first game back and see how he recovers from that before they really go. But make sure to pay attention to all news with CMC coming up to this week, because it is a great matchup if he plays and is not limited. All right, getting over to our wide receiver 1 spot. We got to start it off with the guy that went nuts last night. 9 targets, 8 receptions for 86 yards, and 2 tutties, DeAndre Hopkins. He's got to be happy to get out of the Tennessee Titans' grasp and into the pass-catching prowess of passes coming from Patrick Mahomes. He's in a great spot. Denver has actually given it up lately to the wide receiver 1s. Let's check out what they've actually done when it breaks down to it. Zay Flowers, 5 for 127 and 2 touchdowns. Leggett, 34 and a touchdown. Cedric Wilson, 57 and a tutty. So wide receiver 1s have actually gotten off a little bit. One of the things that I thought was interesting last week is that Surtain didn't just shadow Flowers. If that is the case, Hopkins starts to look very interesting again. Now, with the success that wide receiver 1s have had, maybe they roll some more coverage over to Hopkins or put Surtain on him to change this. But as it's played out recently, wide receiver 1's been in a good spot versus Denver Broncos, which is not a thing that we were saying earlier in the season. Next, we got Amon-Ra St. Brown versus Houston. So one of the things I harped last week on with Amon-Ra St. Brown is this Detroit Lions team needs to be pushed to really air it out. Amon-Ra, 7 targets, 7 receptions for 57 yards and a tutty last game. But with the weather concerns, they weren't really pushed. Hopefully, This week is different where Houston Texans can put up some points. One of the things with the Lions defense is their passing defense isn't great. There is a path to this game being a little bit of a shootout. And if that's the case, Amon-Ra is in an absolutely great spot to dominate here. So very interested in some Amon-Ra St. Brown. Next, we got Calvin Ridley versus the Chargers. Chargers have been a little bit stingy, not giving up a ton of yardage, 136 yards per game to the wide receiver over the last 4, but 1 touchdown per game. So they are making up a little bit in that touchdown category. The other thing is they've been susceptible to some explosive plays. Tillman had a great game versus them last time, and then now we got Calvin Ridley coming into town. With D-Hop being shipped out, it is his show. He had 8 targets last week, 15 the first week of no D-Hop. So I think the targets are there. We do have to watch this quarterback situation. I do think he is in a better spot with Mason Rudolph than Will Levis, though. I will have a little more concern for him if Will Levis is behind center. I would rather it be Mason Rudolph. But we do need to have some concerns with him getting into the end zone. However, 5,800, he doesn't need a ton to really happen. A 10 reception, 143 day would do just fine. You add a touchdown in, even if from last week, and he's looking real good. I'm interested in Ridley and definitely willing to play him. Next, we got Cedric Wilson Jr. versus the Falcons. So this Saints passing core or wide receiver core is in shambles. Shaheed is gone. Olave is going to miss. Olave has his second concussion of the year. I would be shocked if he plays in this game. So he's likely going to be out a couple games. Just when you have 2 concussions that close together, generally not good things for your head. With that being said, the Saints are now in trouble because their wide receiver core is in shambles. Cedric Wilson could jump in as the wide receiver 1. Last time he did, he had 6 receptions for 57 and a tutty. He's in a good spot. At a cheap price, I'm at least interested in Cedric Wilson, but I'm probably not rolling a ton of ownership his way for me personally in my bankroll. Next, we got Marvin Harrison versus the Jets. The Jets have been a stingy D as a whole, only allowing 126.8 yards to the wide receiver per game, but 0.8 touchdowns. I think Marvin Harrison is in an interesting spot, but not one that I really want to push heavily. I'm fine with having some Marvin Harrison, but I'm not going to go overboard. One last thing I wanted to bring up was this. If you're playing on Fanduel, the Houston versus Lions game is the Sunday night game. So if you're on Draftkings, you can just not listen to this part. But if you're on Fanduel, Nico Collins could potentially come back. Whoever this wide receiver 1 is, Tank Dell or Nico Collins, is in an amazing spot versus the Lions, 21st versus wide receiver 1 in a game that could be a shootout. The game could be very interesting from a fantasy perspective. Tank Dell exploded last game with 6 for 126. Just didn't find the end zone versus the Jets, who we just talked about Marvin Harrison going against. So I am fairly interested in that last Houston versus Detroit game. And it's a very interesting spot to go over. Now, that'll do it for us today. If you want to check out more of our team defense tools, come join us at LionStar. There is the 7-day free trial. Or you could pay $39.99 per month, or use one of our affiliate links to get a free month of LionStar. That'll do it for us today. Please like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you later with more DFS and prop betting talk this week. Have a good one, guys. Peace.